She posted, "Know your worth, crown never settle," on Instagram right after ignoring my calls all night. I commented, "Thanks for the advice." Then I changed my bio to single and uploaded my own post. Her comment section turned against her instantly. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. You're being dramatic. That's what her last text said. Sent at 11:47 p.m., right before she went completely silent for the rest of the night. No calls back. No explanation. Not even a good night, after 3 years of never missing one. Just nothing. And then, at 12:23 a.m., while I was still sitting on my couch staring at a phone that refused to ring, my notification bar lit up. Not a call. Not an apology text. Not even a voice memo saying she fell asleep. It was an Instagram post. From her. Posted publicly, for all 2,400 of her followers to see, including every single person we both knew. The caption read, "Know your worth, never settle for less than what you deserve. Real ones protect your peace." And the photo? Her, in the mirror. Looking stunning. Smiling like someone who had just made a decision she was proud of. I sat there for a long moment, phone in hand, the screen light cutting through my dark living room like a spotlight on something I'd been too comfortable to look at directly. My thumb hovered over the comment box. I don't know what came over me. I don't know if it was the 3 hours of unanswered calls. I don't know if it was the irony of it all. I don't know if it was just that one particular hour of night when your emotions drop their pretense and your honest self finally takes the wheel. But I typed 4 words. Thanks for the advice. Posted it. Put my phone face down on the coffee table. And then I opened my Instagram profile. Found the edit profile section. Scrolled to the bio field, where it had said taken for almost 2 years. Deleted it. Typed 1 word. Single. Hit save. And waited. Let me back up, because this didn't come from nowhere, even though the night made it feel that way. I'm 27. Tara and I had been together for 3 years and 2 months. We lived in separate apartments in the same city, not by choice, just by circumstance, because her lease wasn't up yet and mine was already renewed. We had plans. Spoken ones, not just implied. Plans that had specific timelines and specific neighborhoods, and one very specific conversation about which side of the bed each of us preferred. So no, I wasn't some guy overreacting to a single unanswered call. This was something else entirely. This was a pattern with a peak, and that night was the peak. The day had started completely normally, or at least normally by our recent standards, which, looking back, weren't actually that normal at all. I'd texted her at noon to ask if she wanted to grab dinner that evening. She said she'd let me know. By 4 p.m., nothing. I texted again, just a question mark, casual, not demanding. She replied 2 hours later with, "Been busy, maybe tomorrow?" I said fine. Didn't push it, because that's what I'd been doing for about 4 months at that point. Not pushing, giving space, being understanding, telling myself that relationships have seasons, that she was going through something at work, that patience was what love looked like in the hard chapters. Telling myself all the things you tell yourself when you know something is wrong, but you're not ready to name it out loud. At around 7 p.m., I called her. She didn't pick up. I figured she was in the shower, or her phone was across the room, or she'd fallen asleep early. So I waited. Called again at 8:15. Still nothing. At 9, I sent a text asking if she was okay. Read receipts were on. She'd seen it. No response. At 9:45, I called a 3rd time. This time it rang twice, and I need you to understand what this did to my chest. It went to voicemail. Not the automated kind. Her recorded voice. "Hey, you've reached Tara. Leave a message, and I'll get back to you." Bright and cheerful, that recording. From a time before whatever this was. I left no message. I sat on my couch, and I tried to figure out what I'd done. I genuinely ran through the last 72 hours like a mental film reel, looking for the scene where I'd said something wrong, or forgot something important, or hurt her in some way I wasn't aware of. I came up empty. Nothing. No fight. No forgotten anniversary. No careless comment that had landed badly. Just absence. That particular brand of silence that isn't peaceful. The kind that has weight. At 10:30, I called Connor. Connor's been my best friend since college. He knew Tara. He liked her. Actually, thought she was sharp and funny, which she was, once, in ways that used to make me feel lucky. "She's probably just having a rough night," he said. She declined my call. Connor. Silence on his end. "Oh, yeah. That's..." He paused. "That's not great, man. I know. Have you texted her?" 3 times. And she read them? Read receipts. She saw all of them. Another pause. Do you want to come over? I said no. I don't know why. Maybe I was still waiting for the call back that never came. Maybe some part of me thought if I just stayed on my couch, in the dark, in the quiet, the universe would eventually correct itself. It didn't. What came instead was her post, and my comment, and then my bio update. And then, after a few minutes of sitting with what I'd just done, I opened my own Instagram page. I thought for a long time. I'm not someone who posts much. Maybe 3 or 4 times a year, tops. Nothing curated, nothing performed. Just the occasional photo from somewhere I'd been or something I'd cooked or a skyline I'd walked past at the right time of day. But that night, I scrolled back through my camera roll until I found a photo I'd taken maybe 6 weeks earlier. It was from a morning I'd spent alone at a coffee shop near my apartment. I'd gotten there before sunrise, ordered something strong, sat by the window, and watched the city wake up. It was one of those mornings where you feel, quietly, like yourself. Like the world is asking you nothing and you're offering nothing back, and there's a strange, clean peace in that. I'd taken a photo of my coffee cup against the window, the street blurring soft in the background, pale gold light just starting to press through the glass. The caption I wrote was simple. Some mornings, the silence is the loudest answer you've ever received. No tags, no hashtags, no location, just that. I posted it, and then I put my phone down again, turned off my lamp, and lay in the dark staring at my ceiling with the specific feeling of someone who has just done something they can't undo, which was terrifying. And also, underneath the terror, something that felt disturbingly close to relief. I didn't sleep well. I woke up at 6:14 a.m. to a phone that had apparently spent the night having a crisis of its own. 47 notifications. I'm not exaggerating. 47. 11 missed calls from Tara. 7 texts from her, ranging in tone from confusion to frustration to what I can only describe as controlled panic. 14 comments on my photo from people I knew and some I barely did. 6 DMs. 2 from mutual friends. 1 from her sister, whose name I won't get into, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be a friend of Tara's named Qley, who I'd only met twice at group dinners, and who had apparently gotten my number from somewhere specifically to tell me what she thought of what I'd done. I read them all in order. Not Tara's first. I read the comments on my photo first, because they were somehow easier to process. Most of them were variations of the same thing. You okay? This feels heavy, bro. Sending good vibes. Who hurt you? That one from a college acquaintance trying to be funny, which, in context, landed differently than intended. And then there were the ones from people who had apparently also seen Tara's post, and then seen my comment, and then seen my bio, and then seen my photo, all within the span of 30 minutes. Those comments were quieter, more careful, like people choosing their words because they could sense there was a cliff somewhere nearby, and they didn't know exactly where the edge was. One of them just said, "Damn," which somehow captured the whole situation better than anything else. Then I read Tara's texts. The first one came in at 12:31 a.m., 8 minutes after her post went up. Really? You're going to do that on my post? 12:44 a.m. Can you call me? 12:59 a.m. Why is your bio changed? What does that mean? 1:17 a.m. I don't understand what you're doing right now. 1:34 a.m. So you're just going to post something cryptic and go to sleep? That's mature. 2:02 a.m. Fine. I'll call you tomorrow. 5:58 a.m. I've been up all night. Can we please talk? I set my phone down on my nightstand, lay on my back, stared at the ceiling, and thought about the fact that she'd been up all night. The same night she'd ignored every single one of my calls. The same night she'd declined one of them manually. The same night she'd seen my texts and said nothing. She'd been up all night, apparently, but not to respond to me, just to watch what I did after. I called her back at 7:30 a.m. She picked up before the second ring. Hey. Her voice was tight, careful. Hey. Silence. You want to tell me what last night was? She asked. And there it was. That thing she did, where the conversation always started as if I was the one who needed to explain myself, regardless of the timeline, regardless of what had actually happened. Sure, I said. I called you 4 times. You declined one of them. You read 3 of my texts and didn't respond. And then you posted that. Silence. I was upset, she said. About what? About earlier in the week. About the thing with Connor's party. I blinked. Tara, that was 4 days ago. I know when it was. And you didn't say anything about it for 4 days, and then yesterday you just... went silent, without telling me why. I needed space to process. That's okay. I can respect that. But you could have told me you needed space. You could have sent one text that said, I need a couple days, and I would have given you the entire month if you asked. She didn't respond right away. You embarrassed me, she said finally. I commented 4 words on a public post that you put up while ignoring my calls. On a post that had nothing to do with you. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because of how loudly something can say everything while technically saying nothing at all. Tara, I said slowly. You posted Know Your Worth, Never Settle, at midnight after ignoring your boyfriend for an entire evening. You want to tell me what that post had nothing to do with? More silence. You're reading into it. I'm commenting on what you published. You changed your bio to single. Yes. Are you serious about that? And here's the part I've thought about a lot since then. Because in that moment, I hadn't decided yet. Not completely. Not consciously. But when she asked me, are you serious about that? Something happened in my chest that wasn't confusion. It was clarity. Clear like cold water. Clear like that morning at the coffee shop 6 weeks earlier when I'd watched the city wake up and felt, briefly, exactly like myself. I think we need to talk in person, I said. Yeah, she said quietly. I think so too. We met at a cafe near her apartment. Not ours. Hers. Neutral, but close to her. I'd offered that because I thought it was the fair thing to do. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a coffee she hadn't touched, scrolling through her phone with the focused expression of someone trying very hard to look unbothered. I sat down. She looked up. She looked tired. Which, again, was something I had to actively work through, because she'd told me she'd been up all night, and I understood that, and I felt something about that. But I also needed to stay clear on the sequence of events that had produced that outcome. Hi, she said. Hi. The barista came over. I ordered. We waited. Qley texted you, she said. Yeah. I didn't ask her to. I didn't think you did. What did she say? Nothing that matters right now. Tara wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, even though it had to be lukewarm by then. Your comment, she started, was a response to your post. It made me look bad. Did it? People are in my comments now saying things. Asking questions. Assuming things. I looked at her carefully. What kind of things are they assuming? She hesitated. That I was cheating. Or treating you badly. Someone asked if I was the person you meant in your caption. And what did you tell them? Nothing. I can't. I don't know how to respond to any of it. I nodded slowly. So what you're telling me, I said, is that your comment section has people in it who are drawing conclusions based on the timeline, your post, my comment, my bio change, my photo, and those conclusions are making you uncomfortable. Yes. But those conclusions are wrong. She looked at me, and something shifted in her expression. Something that wasn't anger. Wasn't defensiveness. Just a very tired kind of honesty. They're not entirely wrong, she said. The cafe was loud around us. Someone at the next table was laughing at something on their phone. Music was playing softly overhead. The barista was calling out a name. And Tara was sitting across from me, hands wrapped around a cold coffee cup, finally saying something true. I've been pulling away, she said. I know that. I know you felt it. For months, I said. At least. She closed her eyes briefly. I know. What is it? It's not someone else, she said immediately. I need you to know that. Okay. It's just, I don't know who I am in this relationship anymore. I don't know if who I'm becoming is someone who fits with you. I sat with that for a moment. Why didn't you say that 4 months ago? Because I was hoping I'd figure it out without having to say it. Instead of talking to me. Instead of worrying you. Tara, I said, and my voice came out quieter than I expected. Being worried and knowing what's happening is better than being in the dark thinking I did something wrong. She looked down at the table. I know. Do you? I said I know. Because last night, I spent 3 hours going through everything I'd said and done in the last week trying to figure out what I did to make you go silent. I came up with nothing. And then I saw your post, and I stopped. Took a breath. I felt stupid, I said. I felt genuinely stupid. Like I'd been standing outside a door knocking politely while you'd already decided something on the other side. She didn't say anything. Her jaw moved slightly, like she was working through something. The post wasn't about you, she said again, softer this time. But it also wasn't not about me. A long pause. No, she admitted. It wasn't not about you. We talked for 2 hours. 2 hours that felt sometimes like finally being heard, and sometimes like watching something you loved very much unravel in slow motion, thread by thread, in good lighting, so you could see every detail. She talked about the Connors party thing, Which, for context, was this. For days before all of this, there had been a small get-together at Connor's place, and Tara had come along. And at some point during the night, I'd gotten into a conversation with some people from my old job about a project we'd all worked on, and I'd apparently been so absorbed in it that I hadn't noticed Tara was standing alone near the kitchen for about 20 minutes. She hadn't said anything. Not then. Not on the drive home. Not the next day. Not for 4 days. She just held it and let it expand into something larger than the original moment probably deserved. Though I want to be careful here, because I understand that feeling ignored at a party by your partner is a real thing that hurts. But here's what I told her. Tara, if you'd said something, even on the drive home, I would have heard you. I would have felt terrible about it. I would have apologized immediately and genuinely. But you didn't. You went quiet for 4 days and then punished me with silence while I had no idea what I'd done. I don't think of it as punishment. What do you think of it as? She thought about it. Self-protection. That word sat between us for a second. Self-protection from me? I asked. From getting hurt again. When did I hurt you before? Not you specifically. Just, in general. In past relationships. I go quiet because when I've tried to speak up in the past, it didn't go well. I'm not your past relationships. I know that. Do you act like you know that? She looked at me. Not defensively. Just honestly. No, she said. Sometimes I don't. And I think that was the most honest thing she said all morning. Because the silence wasn't new. The retreating wasn't new. The gap between what was happening between us and what she was willing to put into words had been growing for months, and I had watched it and hoped it would close on its own, and it hadn't, and here we were. Here's the part that's harder to explain. Because from the outside, maybe it looks like everything that happened, the comment, the bio, the post, was some kind of calculated move. Like I had a plan. Like I knew exactly what I was doing and what it would cause, and I did it anyway for some dramatic effect. But that's not what it was. What it was a moment. One specific moment at 12:23 a.m. where something in me, the part that had been absorbing and adjusting and staying patient and swallowing the questions that needed to be asked, just stopped. Not explosively, not angrily, just quietly and completely, like a light that had been dimming for a long time finally going out. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about consequences. I wasn't thinking about her comment section or our mutual friends or what story people would piece together from the crumbs I was leaving. I was just thinking one thing. If you're going to post about knowing your worth at midnight while I sit here wondering what I did wrong, then I am going to take your advice. That was the whole thought. That was all of it. The comment section, though? Okay, I have to talk about the comment section, because that's the part that took on a life of its own in a way I genuinely did not anticipate. By the time Tara and I sat down at that cafe, her post, the one with the mirror selfie and the "Know Your Worth" caption, had turned into something she hadn't expected when she posted it. It had started normally enough. The usual stuff. Yes, queen. So beautiful. This energy. But then someone, I don't know who, I still don't know who, had screenshot my comment and posted it as a reply to someone else's comment. And that single screenshot had redirected the entire conversation. Because the context was clear. My comment had a timestamp. Her post had a timestamp. And anyone who knew both of us, or who looked at my profile, could see the bio change, the photo, the caption. The whole story was there, assembled from 3 separate pieces of public content. And people put it together the way people always do when the pieces fit too neatly to ignore. A girl named Zoe, someone Tara knew from her old college friend group, commented, "Wait, did something happen? Is everything okay?" Which opened the door. And then someone else walked through it. Why does his comment feel like a response to this specific post? His bio literally says single now. Yesterday it didn't. I hate to say this, but this caption plus that comment plus the bio change does tell a story. And then someone posted my photo caption. Some mornings, the silence is the loudest answer you've ever received. That one hit differently in the context of her comment section. Because now it wasn't just a quiet post about a coffee shop morning. Now it was a reply. And people read it that way. Okay, the way his photo caption and her post caption are having a full conversation without either of them saying anything directly. He's not wrong though. If you post "Know Your Worth" and your boyfriend comments "Thanks for the advice" and changes his bio to single, that's not drama. That's communication. Why did she not answer his calls before posting this? That's the part one want to know. And that question, that specific question, was the one that shifted the comment section from curious to something sharper. Because someone answered it. Not Tara, but someone who apparently knew enough to speak. I don't know who it was. An anonymous-ish account with a blank profile picture that commented. She had her red receipts on and was active on here until like 1 a.m. She saw his texts. That was all they said. That was all they needed to say. The comment got 47 likes before Tara deleted it. But by then it had been screenshot. By then it had circulated. By then the conversation had already moved somewhere that a delete button couldn't reach. Tara told me about all of this at the cafe, piece by piece, as she scrolled through her phone with an expression I hadn't seen from her before. Not the anger I'd braced for. Something quieter. Smaller. People are saying I was gaslighting you, she said. What do you think? She set her phone face down on the table. I think I hurt you, she said. I think I did it in a way that looked fine from where I was standing and looked like something else from where you were. And I think posting that, right then, without any context, was wrong. The post itself isn't the problem, I said. I know. The timing is. I know. And the fact that you'd seen my text before you posted it. She flinched. Slightly. I needed to post something that made me feel less like everything was falling apart. So you posted something about knowing your worth. Yes. While actively making me feel like I was worth about 30 minutes of your attention. She said nothing. And I said nothing. And the cafe kept being loud and warm around us. Here's something I want to be careful about, because this is a Reddit post, and I know what the comment sections on these things tend to look like, and I want to be honest about all of it, not just the parts that make me seem reasonable. I'm not a perfect person. I'm not a perfect partner. The party thing. Okay, she should have said something sooner. Yes, absolutely. That's a fair criticism. But I also should have checked in with her more during the night. I should have noticed. I should have made sure she was enjoying herself instead of assuming she was fine because she wasn't visibly upset. That's on me. And there were other things. Small things accumulated. Times I'd been distracted when she was talking and she'd had to repeat herself. Times I'd prioritized comfort over intentionality. Meaning, we'd fall into a routine that felt easy but wasn't necessarily connected. Times I'd said, "You know I love you," in a way that answered a question she hadn't quite asked. I see those things now with more clarity than I had then. But here's the distinction I keep coming back to. I wanted to fix things. I asked questions. I showed up. I called. What I got back, for 4 months, was a slow withdrawal dressed up as peacekeeping. And when I finally did something small, something public, something that could barely be called a statement, the response I got was, "You embarrassed me." Not, "You're right. I'm sorry. Let me explain." Not, "I should have talked to you before it got to this point." But, "You embarrassed me." And that told me something. Not everything, but something important. We left the cafe around 10 a.m. We stood outside on the sidewalk in the thin autumn light, and Tara looked at me with an expression that I think was trying to ask a question she wasn't sure she had the right to ask. "Is your bio still?" "Yes," I said. She nodded once. "Is that something you want to talk more about? Or?" "I don't know yet." She nodded again. Okay. That was it. No dramatic goodbye. No raised voices. No ultimatum from either direction. Just a very quiet Tuesday morning and two people standing on a sidewalk after 2 hours of the most honest conversation we'd had in 4 months, still not sure what came next. I walked back to my car. She walked back toward her apartment. I drove home, and I sat in my parking spot for about 15 minutes before I went inside, not because I was emotional, but because I genuinely needed a moment to let myself understand that something had shifted, maybe permanently, and I didn't need to make any more decisions in that moment to acknowledge that. Over the next few days, the comment section drama wound down the way these things do. People moved on to other things. Tara eventually posted a new photo, a muted, quiet thing, no caption, just an image, that seemed designed to reset the visual narrative of her page. Some of her friends texted me. A couple of them were kind. One of them, a girl named Presley who Tara and I had both been friendly with, sent me a voice note that was about 4 minutes long and mostly consisted of her sighing and saying, "I love you both, and this is sad and I hope it works out, but also I understand why you did what you did." Which felt more generous than it needed to be. Connor called me the day after the cafe conversation. He knew something had happened from the notifications. He followed both of us, but he'd waited because that's who Connor is. "Talk to me," he said. So I did. I told him everything. The calls, the declined ring, the post, the comment, the bio, the photo, the cafe. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a long pause. "You good?" he asked. "I think so. You don't sound like someone who's not good. You sound like someone who's tired." "Those are different things." "Yeah," he said. "They are." Are you tired in the way where you need to rest, and then you'll be okay? Or tired in the way where you finally stopped carrying something that was too heavy? I thought about that for a long moment. The second one, I said. Okay, he said. Then you know what to do. Here's what I've been thinking about since all of this happened. And I want to say it carefully, because I don't want this to sound like a lesson or a conclusion, because life isn't a lesson and most things don't have conclusions. But I've been thinking about the post. Not with bitterness. With something more like fascination. Because Tara posted that caption, "Know your worth. Never settle." And the thing is, she wasn't wrong. She just didn't know she was giving the advice to both of us. She thought she was processing something privately in a public space, the way a lot of people do on social media, without fully acknowledging what they're doing. She thought that the 2,400 people who followed her would see a strong woman working through something and leave encouraging comments and move on. And most of them did. But the one comment that mattered, the one from a person who had spent the evening trying to reach her and had been declined and read-receipted and ignored, that comment did something she didn't account for. It reflected the post back at itself. And suddenly the advice wasn't inspirational. It was a mirror. And when you put a mirror in front of something, sometimes what you see is exactly what you needed to see. Even if you didn't want to see it. Even if it changes everything. Tara and I did not get back together. That's not the ending I would have written at the start of this. But it's the one that happened, and I've made a kind of peace with it that I think is honest. We talked 2 more times after the cafe. Once on the phone, about 2 weeks later. Once in person, about a month after that. Both conversations were real. Both were gentle, actually. Not the raw, tired honesty of the cafe, but something more considered. She said she'd been in therapy. She said she was working on the silence thing. She said she thought she'd been unfair to me in ways she was still trying to fully understand. She didn't ask me to wait. I didn't ask her to change faster. And somewhere in the space between those two things, we found a way to close something without slamming it, which is rarer than it should be. And I want to be honest, it still hurt. Even with the clarity. Even with the knowledge that the relationship had been quietly losing its shape for months before that night. Even knowing that I'd said what I needed to say in the only language available to me at 12:23 a.m. on a sleepless Tuesday. It still hurt in the specific way that endings hurt when they were preceded by a very long goodbye you didn't know was happening. The comment on her post is still there. I know because someone mentioned it to me a few months later, surprised it was still up. Tara never deleted it. I've wondered about that sometimes. I don't know what it means. Maybe nothing. Maybe she left it because it was accurate and she knew it. Maybe she left it because deleting it would have felt like erasing something that actually happened. Maybe she just forgot. People do that too. My Instagram bio still says single. Not because I'm making a statement. Not because I'm keeping score. It's just accurate right now, and I've never felt the need to perform something that isn't true. The photo is still up too. The coffee cup. The soft gold light. The caption. Some mornings, the silence is the loudest answer you've ever received. I still think that's true. I still think about that morning, 6 weeks before the night everything changed, when I sat alone at that window and felt the particular freedom of not being asked for anything. I didn't know then that 6 weeks later I'd post that photo in the specific way I did, at the specific moment I did. But sometimes the things you carry with you arrive at exactly the right time. Even if the right time doesn't look anything like what you hoped for. If there's anything I'd say to someone reading this who recognizes their own situation in it, and not a lesson, just a thing I actually believe now, it's this. Silence isn't neutral. It's a choice. And when someone repeatedly chooses silence over conversation, over honesty, over the discomfort of saying the difficult thing out loud, they are communicating something. They may not mean to. They may not realize they are. But they are. And the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and honestly for them too, is to hear what the silence is actually saying, and then respond accordingly. Even at 12:23 a.m. Even with 4 words. Even if those 4 words are, thanks for the advice. Because sometimes the advice is exactly right. It just arrived from the wrong direction. The last thing I'll say, Tara posted something recently. I still follow her. We kept that, at a distance, the way some people manage to do. The post was different from the mirror selfie. It was a photo from what looked like a trail somewhere, pine trees, pale gray sky, her back to the camera, walking ahead. The caption was just, learning to say things out loud. No crown emoji. No motivational framing. Just that. I double tapped it. Not because I'm holding on to something. Not because I was sending a signal. Just because it was honest. And honest things deserve to be acknowledged. Even when the chapter is already closed. even when all that's left is the particular quiet of a story that ended before you were ready, in the only way it was ever going to.